If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, but I'm going to say it again here today because I know you guys love this question. What is the best PCT? Stay tuned.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation. Of course, the Tampa Pro a week and a half away. Dave, myself, and Aman will be there to cover the show. And then 2 weeks after that, the Texas Pro. Dave and I will be there. So two mega shows upcoming. China Pro in between as well. The Atlanta Pro with this debut men's open class as well. So a lot going on over the course of the next month. If you're not already following us here, subscribe below, hit the notification bell, and on Instagram, official_RxMuscle. We go right into the questions. The first two questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question, PCT related. I had to stop running cycles because I PCTed with enclomiphene and developed eye floaters from it. It freaked me out, and I'm not ready to leave my fertility in the dust by taking TRT yet. Are there any PCT options that don't require SERMs or medications that have eye side effects? Can you discuss these eye issues from drugs that we bodybuilders might be taking?
Yeah, I never really heard too many complaints about eye issues. I know that there are some potential issues that I've seen reported, but I don't think it's very commonplace to get any kind of eye issues, especially floaters caused by, selective androgen receptor blockers. You don't really need those. They're not like the do-all end-all of PCT. My HCG is probably the most important part of the whole PCT because that mimics luteinizing hormone, or LH. It directly stimulates the testicles to produce testosterone. So it's turning on the testicles, which is what we really need. Obviously, the estrogen receptor blockers like Nolvadex, enclomiphene is really not an estrogen receptor blocker. Clomid is. Enclomiphene kind of mimics gonadotropic releasing hormone, which directly stimulates the pituitary to release LH and FSH, which then stimulates the testicles. So I don't know why enclomiphene would cause that, but a lot of times things happen and then we blame it on whatever we're doing at the moment. So if you don't want to take any estrogen receptor blockers or any of those enclomiphene derived products, then just stay away from them. Maybe use Nolvadex. If you don't want to use that, just use the HCG. Instead of doing 2 weeks of it, do 3 weeks of it, 2,000 units every third day, and then stick the whole time on my Testalized product from Species Nutrition, which will maximize testosterone, minimize the excessive estrogen, and also minimize the excess DHT conversion. So that usually is an acceptable and viable PCT. I never really thought long term the estrogen receptor blockers really did that much. When we talk about fertility protocols, they're helpful. But if you're only using it for 2 weeks anyway, first of all, I don't think you can get any side effects from it. And secondly, you just don't have to use it. And once again, enclomiphene is not the same as Clomid, which is known as clomiphene. So enclomiphene is like I said, it's a gonadotropic releasing hormone mimicker. So like I said, I'm not sure if that's what caused your floaters, but floaters just can happen as your eyes dry out, as you get older. My father used to get them, used to drive him crazy. And I know they're annoying. Sometimes if you get kicked or you get some kind of blunt trauma to the eye, it can cause floaters too, which usually settle out after a while. So was it caused by the enclomiphene? Who knows?
Second question, again, these first two from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. question about a very large amount of weight for weight loss. I'm a big fan. Would love some insight. I was 530 pounds, had gastric sleeve surgery, and I'm now down to 380 pounds. I'm 6'4", 37 years old. Because of the gastric sleeve and age, are my chances of building muscle and decent body slim to none? If not, how do I start, or how would you start? Any tips and thoughts appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, the stomach there is some protein digestion that occurs initially in the stomach, like that's where it started. But most of the protein digestion, believe it or not, gets done in the small intestine. So when it leaves the stomach. So yeah, you can definitely put muscle on. I mean, because most of your absorption, pretty much all of your protein absorption occurs in the small intestine, in that first part of it, which is known as the duodenum. That's where all your enzymes are released, your protein digestive enzymes, your fat digestive enzymes, more carbohydrate digestive enzymes are released. They're all coming out of the pancreas at that point. And so even if, like I said, your space in your stomach is limited, and maybe even some of the gastric juice and the digestive enzymes that are released into the stomach are minimized, you're still going to digest your food. You know, what usually the gastric sleeve does is it prevents you from eating large amounts of food, which is helpful, obviously, to losing weight. So you're just going to have to do smaller meals, which you should be doing anyway, small meals throughout the day, and I think you'll digest fine. It's interesting because I didn't think they did gastric sleeves anymore, because now everyone's on, GLP-1 agonists, and so I thought that they were done with that surgery, but maybe there's still some residual leftovers that are people getting it done. But yeah, I think you should be able to grow, no problem. I don't see an issue with it. These two questions were from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. It's an app you can download to your Android phone or your iPhone. It's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. All my videos, all my articles I've written, my diets are in there: keto diet, cyclical keto diet, all my drug cycles. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum. You see everyone's questions and answers. I do a Q&A video exclusively for the app members every single week. So you get that. We put workouts up every week. It's a great app. It constantly evolves. Whatever the newest and greatest stuff out there is, I'm always addressing it. And it's just a good way to keep up on what's going on in the industry. At least you know what you're hearing is the truth. And you guys have been supporting that app for many years now, and I really appreciate it. And the reason why it's still going very strong is because we're always putting new information up. And I think you guys appreciate it. I know a lot of people out there always say, Dave, I can't afford coaching, but it's the least I can do for all the free information you give out there. I subscribe to your app, and thank you so much.
Before we go to the rest of our questions, we give a shout out to our friends over at Titan Medical, who we are going to be seeing next week at the Texas Pro. Obviously, Titan, a very big presence always at the Tampa Pro. They're going to have Mike O'Hearn there. So, of course, like we always do at the Olympia, when we have Mike O'Hearn and Dave Palumbo, we're going to have some fun little episodes there. But very important. Titan Medical, obviously, you know them for their medical weight loss, for their blood work, for their injectable therapies. But the most important service, really, and that Dave is always so complimentary of, is the fact that they offer discounted blood work. Obviously, they're very tied in, very tuned into the bodybuilding community. They understand that many bodybuilders, have a lack of insurance. So getting access to blood work is of the utmost importance. That's something where Titan really fills a void.
How old is Mike's son now? Is he 8 or 10?
Mike's son. That's a very good question.
My kids are going to be there too. I know he's going to bring his kid probably. We should probably have like a jousting, we should do like multiple events. Like my son and his son can have a race. They can joust. They can do jiu-jitsu against each other. They can have a pose down. It's like almost like a little mini decathlon we can do. His son isn't in hardcore training though, but my son does jiu-jitsu and he's just a lunatic. So I think that the two of them would get along really well. I don't know. I have to ask him if he's bringing his kid though. That would be fun.
But again, If you haven't taken advantage of any of their services, go right now, TitanMedicalCenter.com, or you can call them 727-389-3220. We'll leave the number below. And as always, mention Dave Palumbo, RxMuscle, and they will give you the royal treatment. Go right
get your glow stack. Glow stack. A lot of people have been asking me, what's one of my favorite compounds over there? And I always tell them the glow stack, which is BPC 157, TB 500, KPV, which is the anti-inflammatory peptide, and the copper peptide. So if you have an injury, that's like you're hitting all four things. You're reducing inflammation, you're giving copper, which is important for the connective tissue repair. And then the TB500 and BPC157 are great for tissue repair and new vascularization. So that four-pronged approach to injuries seems to work really well. So if you have any injuries you just had, or you have a nagging injury, a lot of guys are recovering from surgeries, get the Glow Stack. And make sure you mention my name. You'll get a great discount.
Let's go to the rest of our questions. We're taking questions from both our YouTube community as well as our Instagram. Again, if you're not already following us on Instagram, official_RxMuscle. We had this question about body recomp. Now, we do get this question in a variety of different forms. We actually just had one earlier about somebody losing a lot of weight and looking to build muscle. If you can give a general explainer about body recomposition.
In terms of what? What do they want to know?
Somebody's literally asking for you to explain body recomp. But I was saying that we get this question in so many different.
I mean, the way I interpret that is in their meaning that they're gaining muscle and they're burning fat. Scott Conley kind of termed that, coined that nutrient partitioning. Training alone, just working out, will cause that positive nutrient partitioning effect, meaning that your body's going to recomposition itself. In other words, you're going to build muscle and use stored body fat as a fuel source. That happens just naturally, just from training. Eating high protein foods, which we call positive nutrient partitioning agents, will also shift that focus towards building muscle using stored body fat as the fuel source. Nutrient partitioning, another nutrient partitioning drugs would be like steroids, anabolic steroids, GH. Those shift the body's, and it basically what the body's doing is it's building muscle at the expense of stored body fat, and that's what recomposition is all about. Now, when people say to me, "Hey, Dave, I want to build a ton of muscle and I want to burn all my body fat," I always tell them, you can reapportion, how your body is built, but if you try to do both things at the same time, a lot of times you don't accomplish anything. So if you're trying to maximize muscle gains, you really should focus on that. And you will burn a little bit of body fat if you don't eat excessive carbs. But if you're trying to burn body fat, you shouldn't worry about building muscle. You should really worry more about maintaining muscle while maximizing fat loss. And that's why it's good to kind of vary what you're doing throughout the year. And we call that cycling our training, cycling our nutrition goals, and not always trying to gain weight and not always trying to diet, because your body gets stale and stagnant. So there is a recomposition, like formula, obviously shifting your diet more into higher protein, moderate carbs, moderate fat, and then playing with the carb amounts depending on whether you're losing or gaining. So, but I don't know if that's I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly, but that's how I interpret it.
Question about krill oil. Your thoughts on krill oil as a health supplement, and do you think it has benefits for bodybuilders?
Yeah, krill oil is very similar to just regular fish oil. I mean, it is oil from. It's just krill is like a little crustacean that a lot of whales eat, and they eat tons. They'll eat tons and tons of this stuff all day long, and it's high in protein. Obviously, it's high in omega-3 fats, and the sea is full of this stuff. So, you can get omega-3 fats from various places. These krill, these little mini crustaceans, they eat, algae, and they turn the algae, the omega-3 fats in the algae, into usable form. In other words, DHA and EPA, just the way when salmon eat, algae and other fish that contain, small fish that contain omega-3 fats, and they incorporate that into their flesh, and then we eat the salmon. So humans need to eat animal sources of omega-3 fats. Now, where you get it from, whether you get it from salmon oil or anchovies or any of these fatty fishes, it doesn't really matter. They're all pretty much the same, as long as the company that you're using, where you're getting it from, is testing for heavy metals and stuff like that. A lot of these fatty fishes, though, don't really have, like salmon and anchovies and krill don't really have like heavy metals on them. As long as they're testing for that, there's nothing to worry about. Like, we use like a variety of different fish oils, where I get them from. And they use, like I said, the smaller fishes tend to have less heavy metals. That's why anchovies and stuff like that and krill is usually a good source of it. But I don't think one supersedes the other. They pretty much contain the same amount and same ratios of EPA and DHA. It's not really significant. So, if you get a good deal on krill oil, you want to try it, that's fine. What I did to make the Species Nutrition Essential Fatty Acid Supplement unique is that I added the appropriate amount of omega-6 fats that we need coming from GLA, because that's just really hard to get to. And I just wanted to make it, in other words, if I sell just fish oil, everyone sells fish oil, right? Or if I just sell krill oil, everyone sells that. I wanted to sell something that made your life easier. So rather than having to take two separate bottles for omega-3s and 6s, I put them together, and I put the right kind. I put animal sources of omega-3s with the evening primrose for the omega-6. And I actually added an omega-7 fat that's not essential, but it's a great reducer of inflammation in the body, and it sensitizes insulin receptors. It's known as palmitoleic acid. So it's a pretty complete essential fatty acid supplement. Once again, I just don't like to take just fish oil or krill oil alone, because you're kind of throwing the ratio of the two is kind of more important.
We have a ton of really good questions to get to. One question about, why do we record seemingly twice a week now? It's a valid question. It's summer, so we have a lot going on with our schedules right now. Dave this past week was just in Pittsburgh. Dave, how was that, by the way? I mean, obviously, look, if you haven't gotten to watch Heavy Muscle Radio this week, that would be the forum where Dave would kind of talk about being in Pittsburgh for the Teton Masters National Championships for the better part of 5-6 days almost, seemingly. But obviously this week, Heavy Muscle Radio was a much more heavier, much more deeper topic. Obviously, if you are a fan of this channel, you're really into the mainstream of bodybuilding, you're aware, obviously, the controversy surrounding Dave and Chris's son, Fareed Muhammad Aceto. So Dave and Chris really hashed things out, really had a very clarifying conversation. But Dave, I did want to get your thoughts on this past week being in Pittsburgh.
I love the show. I've been going since 94, 95. I mean, that's like 30 years I've been going to that show. I missed a couple years in between, with the COVID years and my kids being born. But that's always a show I love to go to. I love to go to that, the North American every year. Gary Udit and Jim Mannion roll out the red carpet. They let me do pretty much anything I want. I have my athletes. I have a lot of athletes in that show. I love it because it's also, I run into people I haven't seen in a long time, which is really, really kind of, it's almost like, I call it like those two shows, going to those two shows, like going to Thanksgiving and Christmas, you get to see the family that you never see like throughout the whole year. And I see the same people there every single year. It's amazing. There's always a couple add-ons that I hadn't ran into Ryan Kennelly, who's one of the strongest bench pressers in history. I know him since he's 19 years old. When I guest posed in Hawaii, I ran into him there. So he was there at the show with some friends, and I hadn't seen him in a really long time. And like I said, backstage, it's the same guys I see every year. And I always pick up new clients there and kind of reconnect with people I hadn't seen in a while. And it's funny, I ran into people from Ohio when I was in Streetsboro a couple of weeks ago at Dean Caputo's show. The woman who picked me up, my friend Brian's wife, she didn't even tell me she was competing at the show. And she was keeping it a secret. And I ran into her and I'm like, what are you doing here? And she was competing. So it's a like 5-day show, 4 or 5 day show, because they spread it out, which makes it much, much easier to watch because you're not watching like 600 classes in the same day. It's all spread out over, the course of the week. And it's exciting, and there's a lot of pro cards given out. There's controversy obviously that goes on there, but that's at any show. And I had a great time. Jim Mannion hooked me up with this connection at the Capitol Grill. I had a great meal there with my girlfriend on Saturday night. They rolled out the red carpet for us there. And and actually I don't know if a lot of people know, I drove to Pittsburgh because my girlfriend leased a car in Florida and I had to bring it up to her, and then she was going to drive it to New York. And so I drove like 15, 16 hours. I don't even know how many hours it was. It was probably more than that. And I stopped in Morgantown, West Virginia, because you have to go through Morgantown to get to Pittsburgh from where I'm driving. And Morgantown is where I did my little stint in federal prison in 2005, which was over 20 years ago. And I stopped at the gates of the prison, which it's not really a gate. It looks like you're pulling up to a hotel because there's no gates around the place. It's just like, it looks like literally like you're going to a resort. And I did a little video there. I haven't given it to you yet, Sid. I'm editing it. And I'm gonna put it up, and you guys can put it up. We'll put it up on the RxMuscle YouTube channel. But it was like a tribute to where I came from. And listen, we all have stuff that goes on in our life, and we have lows and we have highs, and how you respond to the lows dictates, how high the highs are going to go. And so I thought it was a good tribute. I never thought I'd be back there, but I was driving through there. I figured I had to stop. So that was an interesting, a little add on. And I had some great dinners with a lot of good friends. I met my Species Nutrition, one of my warehouses out there that manufactures, that makes my products, SDC. I visited them, and they rolled out the red carpet to us and showed us their new facility. And one of the things I really enjoy doing is going to manufacturing facilities and seeing what the latest and greatest machinery is, how they're bottling the stuff, how they're the mixing machines, the tablet machines. I can geek out on that all day long. So I had for me, the weekend was really, really enjoyable. And like I said, I look forward, in 6 weeks, I'll be back there in Pittsburgh at the same hotel, at the same setup there, because the North American is going to be taking place. And obviously they got the Pro Master World Championships too. So thank you, Gary and Jim, for always welcoming with open arms.
Let's go on to the rest of our questions, but that is, I didn't know that video that you did. So I think that's something that our fans, people that know you, followed your journey, or have learned from you, I think that's going to be of great interest to them. So that's going to be really cool.
It's going to be fun.
Training related question. After a hard training session, what do you think of the notion of, quote, letting your body come down from the workout before eating, especially solid foods? Is there any validity to this on, I guess, how long should one wait?
What I used to do, especially after like brutal leg workouts or back workouts, which usually included deadlifts, because you feel terrible, you feel like nauseous and stuff, I would gulp a shake down because I knew I couldn't eat anything. So I would drink my post-workout shake, which today would comprise of 2 scoops of Isolyze and a scoop and a half of Carbolyze. Get that down. Get your carbs and your protein, fast absorbing protein down. Anyone can swallow anything. That the liquids are not going to bother your stomach, and then you can just chill and relax. And then I would relax for like about 90 minutes to maybe 2 hours, depending on how nauseous I was. Sometimes I'd fall asleep, take a nap right after that, and then I would eat my next meal, because you were right. You can't really eat after like a workout like that. It's so brutal. It's so traumatizing to the nervous system that you just sometimes feel nauseous a little bit. But you can always drink something. So don't use that as an excuse not to eat, because your little cool down period can turn into 3-4 hours, and now you missed that ideal window of opportunity to absorb all that nutrients. Because remember, after you train, those GLUT4 receptors are mobilized to the surface, which are insulin receptors. Well, they're really receptors that don't require insulin to drive nutrients, carbohydrates into the cells, and proteins that can piggyback on those carbs. So you really want to take advantage of that window. And so, I think it's important that you guzzle that shakedown. I'm talking in off season. I'm not talking about pre-contest or anything like that. Pre-contest, you only have so many meals a day. So if you want to space it, take a half hour to eat, that's fine, but I wouldn't wait too much, longer than that. But off season, do not make excuses. Down the shake, and then you can relax. And then if you want to take another hour, an hour and a half to eat your next meal, that's fine. But my suggestion is to immediately have some sort of food or liquid.
Question about, I guess, not spilling over before show day. How to ensure your gut isn't extended show day after a heavy carb load the night before. Say you have to make the weight cap, then feed late.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this in some videos I did recently, and depending on how late the weigh-in is, will dictate what kind of foods you're going to need to eat. If your weigh-in is like late, like at night, like it's Friday night, and you really have to starve and restrict fluid leading up to that, you're going to have trouble carbing up after that. You better, in those cases, I usually have people carb on Thursday, then deplete them Friday, all day. And if I have to give them a diuretic, I would, so they can make weight. And then afterwards, I'll feed them like a clean meal initially, but then I'll usually give them like a burger and fries and stuff like that, because you're not going to be able to get a lot of volume into them in that short period of time. And they're not going to be able to drink that much either, because they got a show the next morning. If your weigh-in is the day before, then you have a lot more time to do that. The key is, and I tell this to people all the time, and it's funny, I got a lot of people, I guess, watch that video. And the last week before Masters were using the Fiberlize that they hadn't really, maybe they had only been using one serving and they weren't using anything, and they started using it. And they were like, man, you were right. I took those two, and some people use 3 servings a day of the Fiberlize that last week, and they were pooping and everything was moving through them, and they were vacuuming, and they said, my abs never look so good. One of the guys, who I posted on my story, he was so thankful to me. He learned so much about it, and he said the fiber really got him his pro card. He was giving me that kind of praise, which I don't know if that was the case or not, but he said it really helped his stomach. His wife was funny. She was like, I know your voice. I hear it all day long. She's like, he pays no attention to me, but he listens to you all day long. I said, well, pre-contest, let's give him a pass on that one. She's like, all right. But yeah, no, I think the Fiberlize is key that last couple days. And remember, Fiberlize is not a laxative. It trains your intestinal tract to move food through quickly. It feeds the gut bacteria so they're healthy and robust and not letting toxins through. So you don't want to just start Fiberlize like 2 days before. You want to take it every day for the rest of your life, but really you want to take it throughout the whole diet to build up that strength of the colon, to fortify the gut bacteria. So when you get down to those last couple of days, you're not going to have the constipation issues. You're not going to be backed up because your body is going to be on a regular schedule of flushing waste through your body. Consistently. I usually have my people who are regular Fiberlize users do 3 servings that last day before the show, usually morning, afternoon, and right before they stop drinking. And they have no problem using the bathroom, that night or the next morning.
Take a couple more questions. We do have a lot of questions that we're not going to get to on this episode. We'll store them for next one. A lot of good ones, but just it's summer. A lot going on. Question about EQ. Been getting a lot of questions about EQ over the last few episodes. If running equipoise depending on estrogen levels, do you run an AI as well, since EQ is known to work as an AI as well?
I know I've addressed this a million times. I don't see any evidence that EQ acts as an AI or aromatase inhibitor. I've looked at blood work over and over. No one has proven to me like, all right, here's my values on testosterone alone. Here's my values on testosterone and EQ, and look how low my estrogen levels are when I added the EQ. And no one has shown me that. It should be very easy to demonstrate, but no one has shown it to me. So I'm not believing that EQ is an aromatase inhibitor. I do love EQ as an anabolic, but you've heard over the last couple of weeks, Sid, people saying EQ does everything from screw their head up and cause all these problems, and then I have other people say it's an aromatase inhibitor. It has a very, very varied reputation, and a lot of the stuff that people say about it, I don't see it. I know I always have a great appetite and a great pump on it. Everyone I know that ever used EQ always told me they felt great on it. So I'm wondering if the products that people are using are not necessarily real. But once again, no one's demonstrated to me on blood work that the stuff lowers estrogen. So I'm not really buying that. And I think you can use EQ and testosterone with a I would always, if you're using 1,000 milligrams of testosterone, you should be on at least 0.5 milligram of Arimidex, 2-3 times a week anyway, just to minimize estrogen production. I don't think that EQ is going to do anything for estrogen or affect it upwards or downwards in any way whatsoever. So I would just assume that it's neutral, that it doesn't do anything to estrogen. But the testosterone that you're going to be taking definitely will. It will aromatize if you don't take some sort of an aromatase inhibitor. Now, if you're only taking 200, 300 milligrams a week of testosterone, you probably don't have to worry about that. But most people who are looking to put on, mass on their body are taking anywhere from 800 to 1,200 milligrams of testosterone a week with the anabolic. In that sense, you definitely need an aromatase inhibitor.
Take one more question, and we do get a lot of different questions regarding what you know about what somebody else takes. Well, in this case, they want to know if you have any insight as to what a typical pro strongman cycle looks like, and then I guess if we want to extend it to how it compares to a bodybuilder's cycle.
Yeah. Well, I think that where they're similar is everyone takes testosterone, right? I mean, strongmen know that should be the base of their building, structure. their building cycle, excuse me, it should be testosterone mostly. And I don't know how much these guys go up to, but I still stick by my 1,000 milligrams per week being ideal. I'm sure a lot of these guys go more, and I'm sure there's some guys that do a little less than that. To me, that was always ideal. But I know that the strongmen, especially close to competition, will start using the trenbolone. They'll use the orals like Anadrol and Halotestin to increase strength, because it's a rapid increase in strength you get from those. I don't think they do long cycles of those, but I think they do brief, big cycles of those, because those do work really effectively, and they do give you a lot of aggression, and that's what you need. You need aggression, you need strength, endurance. Obviously, anabolics help you recover better, so that's going to give you those red blood cells. I don't think any strongmen are donating blood right before they do a strongman competition. They want all those red blood cells, because that's extra oxygen carrying capacity. And these guys are running. These are 300-pound, 400, some of them 400-pound guys that are running, with heavy things in their hands. That you need endurance, and you need oxygen delivery to the muscles for that. So I think the difference is probably the orals. I think the strongmen will use a lot of orals close to competition. And but other than that, I think bodybuilders and strongmen have the same goal, to build muscle. So I think that a lot of the other stuff is similar. GH, testosterone, the anabolics. It's just, I think that they like those aggressive, androgen, high androgen compounds, close to, as they start peaking for their events.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, on the channel right now. All new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. Obviously, a very introspective, I guess, if you want to call it, episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. Dave, Chris, a very honest conversation. So go check that out if you haven't already done so. Also, all new episode of the After Hours podcast. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. And if you're not already following us on Instagram, official_RxMuscle. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.